Με τον Χάρη Πετρόπουλο μιλούσαμε πριν λίγο στα ελληνικά. Καιρός να μας τα πει στα αγγλικά που είναι και η καλή του γλώσσα, σπουδαστής.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, tell us what exactly you're doing. You're a financial advisor?
Yes, I am a financial advisor. I've been in the industry for close to 25 years now. In the last 3 to 4 years I've been doing a lot of corporate work and doing a lot of debt restructuring. And obviously I make comments about the world economy, specialising on the American economy.
Okay. Tell me what happened now in the world and what happened in America. What's going next?
Absolutely. Geez, we're in a bit of a rut. I guess on the outskirts it seems that things are getting much better. We can see that there are some tentative signs in the American economy that things are picking up, and we can see that through the housing activity. Certainly that's been a big drag on the American economy. Their job situation is still fairly gloomy, but you know, some time ago, a couple of years ago, it was approaching 10%, and now it's just sitting under rate. Obviously, that's not enough to get the American economy going. It's growing roughly at about 2% per annum, but the American economy, they roughly need anything between 350 to 400,000 jobs to really get it going. However, it must be noted that you know, Ben Bernanke has injected so much liquidity into the world economy, not such the American economy. You just have to wonder when such a large economy, at the moment, it's virtually on steroids. At some point in time, they'll have to come off those steroids, and then you'll see if the real American economy is as strong as what they make it out to be. It is my opinion that back in the global financial crisis, we saw Lehman Brothers go under, we saw Bear Stearns be taken over, and also Merrill Lynch. The American economy is a funny economy. We usually talk about the Greek economy and the scandals that happen in the Greek Parliament, but no one seems to point the finger at the Americans. It just seems to me that in America, the large American corporate banks can go broke, and they know very well that someone will save them at the end of the day. So I can't see that the American economy is an economy of democracy. It's more of a dictatorship, to be honest with you. And they're quite strong words, but we saw hundreds of banks go under, and obviously we saw the likes of Citigroup, which is you know, one of the biggest global banks in the world, and they obviously got saved. At this point in time, the Americans have a distinct advantage with their currency. They've devalued their currency to such an extent, and this is one of the reasons why the American economy is showing tentative signs of actually picking up. Look, I hope that the American economy does pick up, because at the end of the day, love them or hate them, you need you know, the American economy to pick up, and eventually the whole world economy will pick up. There are some problems in the world economy. Obviously, Europe is in shambles. Unfortunately, they talk about Greece, but you know, the Americans should look at their own backyard. California, which is the population of California is roughly the same population as Australia. It's about 20 odd million. They're actually in a worse state than the Greek economy. The Californians are in shambles. So let that be noted, because there's too many journalists around the world concentrating on the woes of Spain and in Greece and in Portugal. And if they look at the Californian economy at this point in time, they know there's an unemployment rate of 8% to 9%. But you know, their unemployment rate, who knows? I mean, who can really believe the actual figures? At the moment, 47% of Americans have savings of less than $500 in their bank accounts. So in some ways, we can say part of America is still in depression. Certainly Greece is in depression. It looks like you know, there may be a chance they go back to their own currency, which is the drachma. The only way that they can get out of it, if the Germans decide with the EU to obviously forgive their debt, and obviously there'll be ramifications if they forgive their debt, because then we'll have a European banking crisis, which in turn becomes a world economic crisis. For Australia at this point in time, things are looking really good. They're really bright. Our unemployment rate's 5.4%. As a nation, we have the lowest debt in the world. But it should be said that Australia in the last 20 years has been growing with China. China is obviously importing all of our exports. We've got companies like BHP, we've got companies like Rio Tinto who are exporting billions and billions of dollars of materials. And obviously with the large export market that Australia's created with China, it's creating a great revenue stream for this economy, and hence why we're doing so well. However, in Australia, we do have a problem that, you know, some journalists worldwide some financial journalists have realised that unfortunately as people, our personal debt is one of the highest in the world. It's also noted that the Australians have also got the highest house prices in the world, and as a consequence we have the highest debt in the world. So the Australians face a problem of trying to manage their finances. Interest rates have come down in Australia as well. Our currency is roughly about 105 against the American. And I guess for Australia, if China stops, well, we may be facing the same prospects as California or the same prospects as Europe. I hope it doesn't happen, but unfortunately this is our situation. With reference to Australia, there are a few anomalies in Australia. We have two large supermarket chains. One is called Woolworths and one is called Coles. Two conglomerates that virtually control Australia. There's no regulation in Australia. The ACCC, which oversees these type of organisations, to try and have a fair distribution of organisations and companies operating in Australia. These two seem to have a stranglehold in Australia. They're obviously selling petrol, and as consumers, if we shop at the Coles supermarket, we get an 8-cent discount, which means that your independent petrol station has been knocked out, which means you have Bunnings, which is a large hardware chain, very similar to the American chain, which means your local hardware store has obviously gone broke. So there are some structural changes happening in the world economy at the moment. Certainly the shopping on the internet has had a large impact in Australia, and that's growing fairly large at this point in time. So we're in an evolving world, we're changing. Unfortunately, we're sitting, or I should say fortunately at the moment, Australians are sitting pretty, but geez, you'd like to think that if China does put the brakes on, it looks pretty bad for the Australian market.
So the news is not so...
I think governments. Yeah, I think governments in Australia, paint a pretty picture. And look, it is. If you have a look, as I said, our unemployment rate is 5.4%. The envy of the whole world. We have a strong banking system. We have 4 major banks in Australia, which is quite strange because if you go to other countries worldwide, any country with a population between 15 and 30 million, there could be up to 15 to 20 to 25 to 30 major banks. In Australia, we only have 4 major banks, and these banks seem to have a stranglehold on us as consumers. So when the Reserve Bank of Australia decreased the rates by 25 basis points, they seem to have this attitude that don't have to reduce them by so long. They give us the attitude that given the global financial crisis, given the wholesale rates, that they can't pass on that rate. Well, I think that's baloney. They can pass on that rate. They just want to protect their profits and obviously protect their shareholders. So we're in a unique situation in Australia that we do have a strong banking system and unemployment's rate, but it has been noted that if there's a house pricing crash in Australia of more than 30%, we will face the same problem as Europe does, because obviously the banking assets at the moment are really dependent on us repaying back our mortgages.
So today I think everything comes from the banks, isn't it?
Look,
is the dictators of the
planet
or what? They grab everything?
I think they are. I think when you get large organisations, I mean, in America, it's the Citibank and it's the JP Morgans, and they seem to be able to swing the bat with no resistance. I mean, when you get in Australia 4 banks, and it doesn't matter whether it's the Commonwealth Bank or the ANZ Bank, they're all pretty much in the same pot. When they simply come out and say we cannot reduce our interest rates at the same level as what the Reserve Bank of Australia does, well, shouldn't there be some law that can force them to reduce their interest rates? It almost seems an anomaly that banks can almost decide whether an economy grows well or whether we go into recession. And this is the main problem worldwide, that 20 years ago these banks were in the hands of the government. And what happened through deregulation through our banking system, all these banks became privatised. Once you privatise an organisation, they seem to do whatever they see fit. If Australia had a bank that it was in the government hands, hence our largest bank is Commonwealth Bank, can you imagine if it was still in the government hands, if the Reserve Bank of Australia reduced their rates by 25 basis points and the